We're live. We're live, Jibs.
You're not doing the intro? Respect it. All right. Well, welcome to the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. For this next month or so, I'll be your host. And my name is Jabron Curtis, not Steve. But today I'm here with a big old gang, and I'm here with Coach Steve. I'm here with Dave. Is it Dave Hellman?
Yeah, Dave Holland, Dynasty Dorks.
Dynasty Dorks. And we got Brandon. How you doing, Brandon?
Not too bad. Excited. This is my first podcast, so I'm about ready.
All right, we'll get those pre-podcast jitters out of you.
Yeah,
You'll be a rock star by the end of it. Trust me.
yeah, we'll see.
All right, but today we're gonna talk some 2021 rookie quarterbacks. There's a big, colorful gang. You've been hearing some risers like as Zach Wilson. You've been hearing Mac Jones. Some good speculation that he's just been like a rising stock as well. I think people are kind of sleeping on Justin Fields, if you even ask my opinion, because we were all loving him during the middle of the college season. So we'll get into that later, but we're going to start with some news today. And the first topic of discussion is Sammy Watkins signing with the Baltimore Ravens. So let me ask you guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you think this affects Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown?
Gonna destroy their value week one. I mean, Sammy Watkins, will come out week one with like 2 touchdowns and 100 yards, and that's kind of what you're gonna get out of him. I don't hate the signing. I think it's good for the Ravens, but in terms of fantasy, I think he's in a similar situation, if not worse, in terms of being a consistent fantasy value for us going into 2021.
Yeah, I don't think it puts the Ravens out of the market for a high drafted receiver. It gives them a little bit of a cushion in case they can't get someone they want, day one. But as far as Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown, like Steve said, maybe week one you're worried about it, but he has trouble staying on the field, and it's been quite a while since Sammy Watkins has been a consistent fantasy producer. So I'm not worried about him.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Dave. I don't see it being too big of a difference. I don't see him contributing too well. If anything, maybe it takes away some coverage from Marquise Brown. Puts a different corner on him. But other than that, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
For me, it doesn't really affect. I'll say 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. I think it's just another weapon for Lamar Jackson to have, just kind of take from Kansas City. But hopefully, it just gives him another viable option, just not having Marquise Brown just kind of fling down the field, And then, second news item: Leonard Fournette re-signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, I guess I'll say, like, which running back would you rather own this year for 2021 only in a dynasty league? Would you rather have Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette as your possible RB2?
Probably Lombardi Lenny. I mean, that's his new name he wants to go by. Honestly, I'd rather have neither one of these guys in terms of fantasy. Either format, really. I mean, to me, they just counter-react each other like RB3s at best. And if one of them were to get hurt, we've known Leonard Fournette to kind of see injuries over his career more often than Ronald Jones. So I guess I'd go Ronald Jones on that note, but both these guys are, I think, nothing more than RB3s right now.
Yeah, for me, on draft day, it's going to come down to ADP. I'm not going to have them as one of my top 2 or top 3 running backs, but if I can get as a 4th running back, I'll just take whoever's cheaper out of those options. But like Steve said, it's pretty muddy, and they're going to eat into each other. So as far as upside, it's not there.
Yeah, and I think for me, I lean more Rojo just because when he gets the ball in his hand, he can make some plays that Lenny can't. I think his running style fits that offense a little bit more as far as pass catching out the back. Because you saw Leonard Fournette drop, I don't know how many passes out the backfield last year. So I think I'd lean towards Rojo, but either one I'm kind of staying away from.
And for me, for 2021, I'm going to go with Lombardi Lenny as well. I just think I seen Ronald Jones as kind of brick balls from Tom Brady, just short, like, passes like 5 yards out, and Leonard Fournette definitely made a killing in at least like PPR, half PPR leagues for me. So I'd rather have a little bit of that upside and maybe 8 to 9 carries as a backup, or maybe 10. Going to number 3, pretty unrelevant signing if you ask me, but Tevin Coleman going to the Jets. Do we
I had
need
to put it
any
up there.
further
I had to put that up
discussion? Who would you rather have out of all 4 of them?
The answer is 0, though. But I put it up there. I thought it would be interesting to talk about real quick because I'm assuming the Jets do draft a guy in at least the second round at least. That might just take away Coleman in general, but he has familiarity with the offensive coordinator there and Mike LaFleur. So, I mean, maybe he sees some kind of role. But, again, he's like that guy that in late round drafts that you pick up in the 10th round because he's a bargain at that point, and hopefully he can put up maybe 800 yards in the season. So,
yeah, as far as best ball, he might be someone you take a stab at, but him and LaMichael P. Ryan right now in that backfield, like Steve said, I think they're going to draft somebody. They got 3 picks in the top 34, so you could see someone like an ETN, Javonte Williams, or Harris over there. So I would not be buying him right now with any hopes of anything. Maybe a late stab in best ball.
Yeah. Jets are a team I'm completely staying away from. I'm not a big fan of Mims. I don't like that offense, especially if they take Zach Wilson. I don't think Tevin Coleman doesn't do much for me.
if they take Zach Wilson, sign me up for the Jets offense for sure. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But
and on to T.Y. Hilton, because I don't want to give my take on the Jets situation at the moment. And he resigned with the Colts. I thought he would definitely leave town. But what's your guys' value on him right now?
I mean, it's not bad. We can see if Carson Wentz, we saw him back in Philly have connection with the deep ball. T.Y. definitely thrives in that situation there. Will he be the same? I mean, he's, I think, 31 going into the season, 32. The chances of him being a wide receiver 1 anymore, I think, pretty much slim to none. So, I mean, he could probably maybe have the upside as a low-end wide receiver 2. Definitely a guy who you probably could trade away now at this point, maybe get a second round out of it, just because of the offense and the question marks of the mystery of having Carson Wentz there and possibly making the offense better.
Yeah, offered more money to go to Baltimore. He decided to stay with the Colts. Right now, they don't have, a tight end. They don't have really a second receiver. So he could be like a wide receiver 3 with a borderline wide receiver 2. They still could draft a receiver. I don't know if they still have a second round pick, but that T.Y. Hilton would be a 3 for me, if anything.
Yeah, I traded away T.Y. last year, all my shares of him. I just don't – him being over 30 with as many soft tissue injuries as he's had and him being a speed guy, he's somebody that, if he's healthy, yeah, he could definitely bump up into the wide receiver 2 range, but that's if he's healthy. So, I mean – I'd move him if I could in dynasty leagues, but if not, then he's a hold and maybe die on your bench.
Yeah, I definitely want to get him off my team with the quickest possibility. But we saw last year T.Y. Hilton was basically an abomination for pretty much from the beginning to the midway point of the season, and basically a wide receiver 7 in standard league. So he finished as the wide receiver 41, which is crazy if you ask me. So I don't really mind saying he could be a decent wide receiver 3, but a low end wide receiver 2, that's probably his ceiling, and I find it hard for him to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And Damian Williams going to the Bears. Talk about backfields just getting blown up. The Raiders just signing Kenyon Drake, and then you're just adding Damian Williams to the Tyreek Cohen to the David Montgomery league-winning situation. So how do you guys feel about Damian Williams, first off, going there?
To be honest, I definitely think it takes somewhat of a hit to Montgomery, who I've already been trending downward on. He comes over with Nick Nagy, the familiarity of that offense back with Andy Reid and everything, so he kind of knows the offense to some extent. I don't think he's going to have a role where he's too fantasy relevant, but he could have a role enough to kind of just eat into Montgomery's to being maybe high RB2, but have him be that low RB2 that we all expect him to be even more now. So it's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, if you're looking to handcuff Montgomery, he's the guy. I think you'll see less of Cordell, or at least I hope you see less Cordell Patterson in the backfield. Tariq Cohen coming off of a pretty major injury. He's not a between the tackles runner. So, again, it's going to take some carries away, maybe some goal line touches from Montgomery, so his upside's lowered.
Yeah, I would agree, Dave. I mean, I don't think Damon Williams is 29 now.
I think so.
Maybe he takes away some carries from Montgomery here and there, but I don't see it being a big issue. I actually like Montgomery a good bit, and for this, I don't think Damon Williams does too much to hurt his value.
Same.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's gonna do too much, but I know, like, just based off some of the conversation we just had, that it could be a potential, like, sour spot for a Montgomery owner. Maybe you could capitalize on a young running back who's kind of been unproven, and I know he had a crazy end to the last season, but maybe you could find some value in there and get him on the low.
Good call.
Just like our boy Chris just said on the tweet there, Montgomery's going to be the man.
I believe that. So DeMarcus Robinson re-upping with the Kansas City Chiefs. What does he do anything for you?
He's definitely interesting in terms of dynasty, and to some extent. I mean, we know that the Kansas City number 2 or 3, I guess, pass catcher hasn't really ever been too consistent. But I mean, if you have him, or if you could still buy low on him, I think maybe he could do something. It really will depend if the Chiefs draft somebody, which they very much could be at 31. So, but I mean, he's obviously shown enough talent to do things at times. But it's not a horrible signing if you have him on your team already. But
yeah, I'm gonna stay away. It funnels through Kelsey and funnels through Tyreek Hill. I do think that it's a best ball situation again. You could get Hardman, or you could go get Robinson on the super cheap, and one of those guys is gonna hit a couple times a year. I just am not gonna play the game of trying to guess that in my lineups every week.
Yep, my exact thoughts. I mean, you're going to have to guess the right week and get lucky is what's going to happen. You might get one, catch for 88 yards and a touchdown 2 weeks out of the year, and you're going to have to, it's going to be a fluke if you actually have him in your started lineup. So I'm not touching him. I'm not trading for him. If he's on my team, maybe see if I can get something for him.
What if he was on waivers? Would you pick him up on a whim?
100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a factor in this offense. It might not be big, but it's a fact, some kind of a factor.
Okay, and then we'll just go on to the big ticket item. Tyler Lockett signing that 4-year, $69.2 million extension, kind of submitting his time there with the Seahawks. Does this increase his value, or you think he's still pretty much that kind of inconsistent wide receiver that we're going to get year after year after year? He's going to give you good times, and he's going to give you a lot of bad times too.
I mean, he's always going to – I think his role at this point with Metcalf there is going to be somewhat of inconsistent, up and down, big games, minimal games. But it definitely bodes well slightly, I think, in Dynasty to have a guy who's probably going to be there the next 2 to 3 years at least. I mean, I think he had a year left on this. I think this was his contract year, if I'm not mistaken. So him getting this extension, definitely – you got a guy at least on your fantasy team for the next probably 2 to 3 years. So – I mean, I don't hate it. I like it. He deserves it. He's a really underrated wide receiver in this league, and it just unfortunately can't be as consistent just the way this offense runs right now. So, but if you have him on your team, I think you should be pretty happy that you have a guy who's going to be at least on this somewhat of a Russell Wilson-like passing offense at least.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Russell Wilson is going to be traded at this point. I mean, that's still up in the air a little bit, but having Lockett, like Steve said, having someone attached to Russell Wilson's good. If he's your third or fourth receiver, he offers that boom. Like you may miss a couple weeks, but I just would not have him as my wide receiver too. He just misses way too much. So I'm not going to pay up for him. But if he falls in the draft and I can get him as my third wide receiver, he offers those game-winning weeks that I'd be interested in.
Yeah, I agree. I think – yeah, in Dynasty, it is nice to know that you've got another 4 years of him in that offense with Russell Wilson. Well, at least, unless Wilson gets traded. which I don't think is ever going to happen. But I mean, DK, Steven, you know this. I was big on DK last year.
I love me some DK.
And I mean, he's the number one in that offense. Lockett's not.
Yeah.
I mean, that it is what it is. But yeah, I think he's a decent wide receiver too. I wouldn't have him as a wide receiver 1, but definitely 2.
I agree with all your points. I think he's pretty much a low-end wide receiver 2 with DK Metcalf there. You're going to have some good times. You're going to have some bad times. But it's all just depends on what Seattle's philosophy is going to be next year. If they're going to be a more run-heavy team, is that going to affect like the targets? And because we know there's been a couple games where he just gives you 4 or 5, and it's kind of like a ghost.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And then some more news items, but Mohamed Sanu signs with the 49ers. Chase Daniels signs with the Chargers for a 1-year deal. Willie Snead signs with the Raiders. Adam Humphrey signs with the football team in Washington. Matt Breida signs with Buffalo. Nick Vannett signs a 3-year deal with the Saints. Mercedes Lewis signs a deal with the Packers. CJ Beathard signs a deal with the Jags. James White resigns with the Pats. I like that one. Amir Abdullah signs with the Vikings. Joe Flacco signs with the Eagles, unfortunately. Colt McCoy signs with the Cardinals. And then Caleb Balaj signed with the Steelers, I think, like 2 days ago, which is a low-key move, but could get some buzz, especially on waivers and Dynasty. But now we're going into the meat and potatoes of our segment here. And it's going to be our top, or your guys' top 10 rookies. I'll just put some spice in it with my little takes in between. But I don't know. Typically we go off with a list here, so I think we're going to freelance it, or do you have the list, Steve?
Yeah, I thought I sent you the list.
No, you didn't send me the list.
Well, I'll send you the list, but I'll go with the first one here. It's pretty obvious, guys, who are all of our number ones are at this point. And there it is. Trevor Lawrence. We all have him as our number one guy overall. I guess, I'll go first. With Trevor Lawrence, I don't see him as the guy who everyone says he's a generational type player. I think he's a really good leader. He can make a lot of great throws. He's got a strong arm. I love his mobility, especially in terms of his fantasy production possibly in the future here. He makes a lot of good reads, very smart quarterback. A couple of things that honestly that I really didn't like in a guy like Trevor Lawrence was that I think he's like 6'8" or something like that. He's tall. He's a tall quarterback. And again, there hasn't been many quarterbacks that have been tall, and I don't want to say that's a historical trend or anything like that. But watching film on him, and I'm a big film guy, I seen him throw balls, and they got batted down the line of scrimmage way too often for my like. Watching him just kind of play in games, it didn't seem like the offense. And again, it could have just be Clemson. They didn't throw the ball a lot deep there, at least not often enough for me to say, hey, like I feel great about his deep ball, that it's like fantastic. Things like that kind of just I was kind of concerned about. But again, he's a guy who I think will come in probably with the Jaguars and be a fantastic quarterback in terms of the NFL and fantasy. I think he has basically most of the tools to be a very successful quarterback right now.
Yeah, he's my number one as well. He's 6'6", 213. He's pretty mobile. I think people, they kind of forget about how mobile he is. So there's a lot of things that the offensive coordinators can do with him. I think with CJ Beathard signing there, that it sounds like Minshew could be traded. But yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence is the clear-cut number one. But when we get into the other guys, I think when you do your super flex drafts, it can get interesting when you talk about different landing spots. If people did want to consider somebody over Lawrence, that might be an unpopular opinion, but we'll talk about that when we get to my number two.
Yeah, Lawrence is number one for me too. I'm a Clemson fan. I watched him all year. He makes throws that I don't want to say Mahomes, but Jibs, if you remember that throw Wentz made versus the Redskins to Miles Sanders in the corner of the end zone, he makes those kinds of throws constantly. Off balance, he can get it down the field. Steven, I see your face. But he does have a tendency to overthrow guys, and I think that just has to do with some of, not only the talent he had around him this year, which was not ideal. His best receiver was Amari Rodgers. And but to me, it's Lawrence and then a tier break. I don't think there's anybody particularly close, but that's just – see, Steven, I see you. Mr. Zach Wilson over there.
Eyes, man. Zach Wilson, man. I can't wait to talk about Zach Wilson. I love some Zach Wilson, but Jibs, I'll go to you. My bad. Jumping in there.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence has to be the unanimous one. If we've been kind of glamoring over him for the last 3 years, thrown over 3,000 yards in the last 3 seasons in his collegiate career, 66% completion percentage. The guy is just he's that kind of quarterback, that the prototypical quarterback that all the analysts wanted back in the day. But like fantasy for me, like he's gonna be a good quarterback, but like for me, like I want that new age fantasy quarterback, and we're gonna talk about him soon. So I'll let you guys go on to the second pick, which is Justin Fields, who I also have second for myself. And based on some previous jabs at each other, I want to hear Dave's take on this.
So yeah, Justin Fields is my number 2. I think for Trevor Lawrence, I can get with the tier break that you're talking about with talent wise as far as an NFL quarterback, but for fantasy purposes, Justin Fields on the San Francisco 49ers, I would not hate someone taking him 101 in their super flex drafts. He's got George Kittle, he's got Kyle Shanahan is an X factor. You got Brandon Ayuk, you got Deebo Samuel, and they can still draft. We can still draft a receiver. There's some good receivers in this draft that you can get day 3 or even day 2. So I think he would be in consideration. I like Justin Fields. I think he's got good upside. He's, he definitely had some inconsistencies with some of the things he did on the field this year that you can point at. But he showed up in big games. He's got great athletic traits, and he can make all the throws. I'm a big Justin Fields fan.
All right. Brandon, you go next because you also had him too.
Yeah, I love Justin Fields. I love who he is as a person. I love the way he plays the game. In the game versus Clemson, when he spun into that tackle and he hurt his hip and he played the rest of the game, I was like, that's what it takes. That's what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. He throws a beautiful ball too. His motion is outstanding. And I love the fact that he ran a 4.44. That, like, I would not be mad at somebody taking him 101 in a super flex draft. Just, I wouldn't. He'll probably be right up there with Lawrence in fantasy this year.
Oh, and our man Chris Pinto says Fields to Atlanta, and our thoughts about that. I actually, like, for my little segment, I thought that was a dream destination, and unfortunately, they're kind of just hitting pits up on Zoom, anything. They're not letting that man have a time of day. Like, he can't even check IG, so it's not looking too good for him. But like, if he went to Atlanta, for me, he'll be an elite fantasy option with those receivers and doable tight ends that they have, and they could get a running back later on.
He's not going to be there. He's going to be gone at 2 or 3.
2,
I believe it.
Yeah. I guess I'll finish up because I guess I had him the lowest. And again, me having him at 3 guys isn't saying that like I don't like Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields. I think he's a fantastic passer. I just like Zach Wilson more. And when we get to him, I'll talk about that. But some of the things I like kind of noticed with him was like, again, he can make all the throws. He can obviously run very fast. He's got toughness in him that you got to love in a quarterback. But again, at times his decision making was questionable for me. Him not being able to step in his throws as often as I'd like to see as a quarterback. And he played a lot out of the shotgun. I watched like 10 or 12 games on him. He played a lot out of the shotgun. I would have loved to see him play a little bit more on the line of scrimmage there. And things like that kind of just put me at 3 with him. And again, it's not me hating him. I love Justin Fields. I think if he goes to San Fran, you could definitely argue he could be the 101 in terms of in drafts right now. It's just that I like these other 2 guys way more than I like Justin Fields. But me having a 3 has nothing to do about him. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. And again, if he goes to San Fran or even Atlanta, I don't think he's going to be Mike Vick 2.0, but he's going to be fantastic wherever he goes in this draft year this year.
All right. So then we're gonna go on to number 3, which is Zach Wilson out of BYU. So Coach Steve, Mr. Tootin Bandwagon Express over here. Tell
Uh,
us why you love Zach Wilson so much, who's probably gonna end up on the Jets.
I know that's what I hate about it, that he's going to end up on the New York Jets, because obviously I hate the Jets, being a Dolphins fan, as you guys can see. But watching him again, he's mobile just like Justin Fields. I think he can make pretty much all the throws in the game here. He's a very accurate quarterback, and that's one of the things I like in my quarterbacks. Had a very accurate quarterback, and the thing when watching his film was that he just had this it factor. And I think I told someone this one time, they're like, "You're crazy, Steve. You're crazy." But like he has that like. And not saying he's Pat Mahomes or anything like that. Definitely not saying that. But you've seen throws that Pat Mahomes makes. Like, how the hell do you make that throw? I saw Wilson make these kind of throws while watching his film over the last year or two now. And I just think unfortunately, he's going to the Jets. More than likely, if he went to San Fran, I think I'd probably pick him 1-1. But I just think his overall talent, he's much closer than Trevor Lawrence. And people say that Trevor Lawrence is big teardrop to me personally. I think he can be a really good quarterback in this league here and be somewhat of a hybrid, Russell Wilson kind of type of quarterback in this league here. And hopefully he can do it with the Jets, because we know the Jets are kind of, But I love what I watched on film with him.
So they do call him the Mormon Mahomes. So with the Jets, this is something I've been saying all offseason. They are the San Francisco East. So when we think about like what the Jets offense looks like and what a quarterback looks like in a Jets jersey, let's remember it's a whole new coaching staff. It's going to be, that San Francisco, the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay type of an offense. And, I think he does fit well. He's going to be able to offer some of the zone read kind of stuff, as well as, he's got a big arm for his size. And, that play action pass that they're going to be doing on those stretch boots, it's going to be dangerous, whether it's Fields or Wilson. But with Wilson, he came in at 6'2", 214 with 9.5-inch hands, bigger than I think a lot of people expected, which was good for him. He's not the biggest guy. But I think him coming in at that weight and that height, I think did him favors, and I think he is a lock for the number 2 with the Jets, from what it sounds like.
Yeah, Wilson's my quarterback 4. Now, see, did you watch the CCU game, Steve?
I have to go back.
Bullied that man. They bullied him.
Check out my video. I put a video up today of the CCU players just beating the crap out of Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I saw that actually.
He threw that interception, and they were returning it at the end of the half. They bullied him. The reason I have him at 4 is part of that, the fact that a small school like CCU, which is 10 minutes up the road from me, was able to do something like that to him. His arm is absolutely insane. Like that ball jumps out of his hand. I just don't know how he's going to do in the NFL, especially behind a Jets O-line that's not the greatest.
Average.
Yeah.
Average at least. It's not horrible.
It's not horrible, but it's still not good. And BYU's offensive line was one of their strengths this year. I don't know. I don't think he pans out, but I mean, I can see how he does. I can see a situation in which he does.
All right. Well, for me, I think he could do some things Justin Fields can't do, and Justin Fields does some things better athletically. Like, I know Zach Wilson's buzz is basically he can make killer, like, out-of-pocket throws, extend the play, which is great in the NFL, so I kind of translate that to some rushing ability. But for me, like, the nail in the coffin is, like, I just don't trust, like, the BYU, like, they play, like, is it an independent schedule, Brandon? Like, what
I believe so. Yeah, I think
they're playing some good teams, they're playing some bad teams. This year, like, their schedule got completely messed up with COVID and all that. Mm-hmm. And they had a pretty easy schedule. Like, they got pushed around some games. They were a dominant force. They were ranked, I think, probably top 10 at least. But I just, like, Justin Fields' pedigree. Like, I know this man done that for 2 years. He's thrown 40 touchdowns last year. Yeah, maybe had like a inconsistent year this year, but hey, I'll trust that on top of that rushing ability as well.
You put Zach Wilson in Alabama, yo. Would have been amazing. Just saying. Would have been amazing.
Stomped. All right. But going down to number 4, and we have Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. Didn't Carson Wentz play at North Dakota State?
Sure did.
Yeah. Okay, one of those guys.
Yeah.
All right. So, Steve, I'll let you go on this one.
Now let Brandon go. He's the high guy on him.
Okay.
I didn't see that. Okay.
Yeah, I've got him at 3.
3?
You got him
Yeah,
please.
I got him at 3. All right, here's why I got him at 3. For one, I know he plays D2. I know it's the best D2 school in the nation. They've won I don't know how many back-to-back championships. But when you see somebody play D2, what do you people always say? They want to see them dominate their competition. 2019, I could say he dominated to the best of his ability. I mean, 28 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
Oh.
That's impressive even for D2. He can run the ball, and he's got a cannon of an arm. His arm's ridiculous. And he's not a small dude. You've seen him at his pro day. He's a stocky looking guy. Like, he's right up there with Justin Fields as far as that goes. I like his upside more than I like Fields's. That's not to take away too much from Wilson, but I don't know. The reason I have him higher is I just think his upside is just so much better than Wilson's will be in the NFL. And I think he goes to a better landing spot as well. You can see him go to Atlanta, and then, there you go.
We're talking something there for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll go next on Trey Lance. He's 6'3", 224, and not only did he have that 28 touchdowns with 0 interceptions, but he had 1,100 yards with 14 rushing touchdowns. So he offers, a lot. One thing when I watched the tape on him was he misses guys badly at times. I do think that's just footwork and some mechanics. But I like all the stuff agreeing with you on all the reasons that I do like him. And I want to just put this out there. Part of the reason I put that video up was, you hop on a thread and say you like Zach Wilson, and then all the Trey Lance and Justin Fields guys are like, you hate Justin Fields, you hate Trey Lance. You can like 4 guys. You can like all 4 of them, It's just because you have one at 2 doesn't mean you hate the guy at 3. And Trey Lance for me, him and Wilson are really close for me. I feel like it's Lawrence, teardrop, Fields, teardrop, and Wilson and Lance are very close. I think they're just really raw upside players. I would like to see Lance go to Atlanta and sit behind Ryan. And Atlanta could definitely get a bunch of phone calls. Lance to the Broncos, if the Broncos traded up, would be very fun. And it definitely would stick it to Carolina because Carolina wants him, and allow the Broncos to trade ahead of them to get him would be nice for Atlanta.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in here now. Like I said, like you mentioned there, Dave, like I like Trey Lance. I like him a lot. He's at 4 for me is that he's still raw. He's got tremendous upside. He could literally be honestly, his upside could be the best quarterback in this class, very much so. Again, for me, it's accuracy. His deep ball game I saw him just kind of, some of his throws were like just very questionable. He locked onto his wide receivers way too often for me to watch. I think he still needs to be able to read defenses a little bit better. Again, he's probably a better fantasy player year 1 than he is probably an NFL player. But again, I prefer if he would have sit like a year or 2, at least a year behind maybe the Atlanta Falcons. But he's got that upside to do very well. It's just that he's very raw as a quarterback. And like you said, honestly, these top 4 quarterbacks I love. After this is a huge drop-off for me. Everyone else at this point is just, to be honest, round 2 or later. We'll talk about, obviously, a guy like Mac Jones maybe in a second. But I think Trey Lance, he's got a lot of talent. He needs to be with the right coaching staff to kind of work him up to kind of fix the mechanics a little bit. And I think if he does that, he could be a really, really good quarterback in this football league, and really good in fantasy, especially with his rushing ability.
Hey, Jibs, I want to jump in real quick. One thing with the quarterback. So Move the Sticks, Daniel Jeremiah, he talked about evaluating the quarterbacks. And what he did was he took all of their 3rd and 7th throws and evaluated them side by side just to see how they did. Because, a guy can throw a bubble screen or a 1-yard pass and look great. But how does he do when you have to pass? You got guys in your face. You have to throw down the field. And that's where he said Trey Lance really stuck out against the other guys. When I talk about those other, he looked worse than when Wilson and Fields and Lawrence were just far more accurate. And they were just, they performed a lot better in those 3rd and 7 situations. So that stuck with me too.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point, because that's do or die right there, because you're not definitely getting 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5s all the time in the NFL, especially with the penalties going along. But
yeah, and I feel like a lot of that had to do with his inexperience. I mean, he was starting as a redshirt freshman, but it could just be how he is, just not used to, being pressured, and he just can't make those decisions like that.
He'll get experience in the NFL, surely. But let me ask you guys a question. So, with Steve's point saying that he feels like that 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's like a breakdown of like quality for the quarterbacks in the dynasty draft, where would you expect the last quarterback to be taken?
1-6
Superflex rookie draft. Sorry.
It depends on where Trey Lance falls, but 1-6 probably the lowest. If he falls to Atlanta, he may fall a little bit more, but if he goes to Carolina or Denver, 1-5 probably, 1-6 to me.
Yeah, I've done a few rookie Superflex mock drafts, and he's not gone past 107.
Yeah, I don't see him getting past 106, 107 either.
All right, you heard it here, folks. Better get you guys your quarterbacks when you need them. And then we're going to go to Mac Jones, Alabama's quarterback, who profiled pretty great. Like, I read an ESPN article, and it was basically, I don't know if it was just ESPN pumping up Alabama as they usually do, but like they were just going in that Mac Jones is like the most accurate quarterback. He's literally a great draft prospect, but I see you guys have him 5, and like I get it, like it's fantasy. Like for me, like Matt Jones seems like the most vanilla guy on the planet. Like he can make quick throws and very accurate stuff like that, but it's basically Alabama's system to me. So I'll let you guys explain your rationale, and I'll start with Steve since you have him 6.
Yeah, I have him 6. I think he will likely be a top 15 pick in this draft. It's no question about that here, and he'll probably have fantasy relevance, obviously. But for me, he's a proven. I think he's a proven leader in this offense here. He can definitely make a lot of very accurate throws. I think in the short to intermediate game, his deep ball is very inaccurate more often than not. He doesn't have the mobility that, I know at his pro day, people are like, oh, he's faster than you think. Well, I still don't think he's faster than you think. I mean, put the pads on him in gameplay situations. These NFL linebackers are going to come at him in a heartbeat. Some other things I really didn't like was that, it didn't show a lot in the stats. You didn't see him throw a lot of picks. I think he had like 4 picks in the season here or something like that. But just watching back on his film there, like you saw him miss a defender that was kind of just in the middle of the field there. And unfortunately, the defender dropped it more times than not there. And I think he needs to do better on just kind of reading the defenses there. And I think he got away with a lot of mental mistakes. Again, that's something that can be cleaned up there. But again, his mobility, this is the new NFL nowadays. I mean, you have to have some kind of mobility to at least a decent mobility. And I just don't even think he has that right now. And again, if he ends up in the right situation, maybe like the Patriots where they don't force them to throw the ball deep, it's more that dump it off to the running backs. Obviously the new tight end situation there, that might be a best situation for him. But I mean, if he ends up in a place like, say, Chicago or like, I don't know, Denver, I just wouldn't care for that much still.
Yeah, Mac Jones, I mean, he's got a great situation in Alabama. He's got, awesome weapons. He has a clean pocket. I don't think he's ever saw a dirty pocket. And, he does what you ask him to do. I wouldn't say he's a bad quarterback. It's just in comparison to this class, he's my 5. But yeah, I think I would like him in the Broncos, Steve. I do like Pat Shurmur as the offensive coordinator. He did, a lot of nice things when he was in Minnesota with Case Keenum. He's done nice things in the past with other quarterbacks. I think with Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton and Noah Fant, it would be interesting. And I'm not a Drew Lock supporter. I was actually going to ask you guys, would you rather Mac Jones or Drew Lock? And for me, I would rather Mac Jones.
Mac Jones all day.
Yeah, Mac Jones.
Yeah, I'd rather have Mac Jones.
Drew Lock's under pressure is terrible.
Just like Zach Wilson. But anyway,
switch the quarterback.
I got Mac Jones at 5 as well. He had the perfect situation in Alabama, like you were saying, Dave. I mean, rarely ever hit the ground from pass rush. And it's hard not to hit wide open Devontae Smith. I mean, or Jalen Waddle, or hit Najee Harris out of the backfield. Like, it's hard not to look good when you're playing with 3 first-round wide receivers this past season. Mechie might be. His blocking is ridiculous, but Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and Mechie. I mean, you're talking about three first-round draft picks just in wide receivers. So I think his offense helped him out a bit, but he's lumped in there with all the rest of the guys for me.
I agree with Jill as well. Like, I think going to Denver would probably be a very good situation because he'll have established weapons. But Steve also made a good point going to New England. He could get spoon-fed into being an NFL starter, and he'll have 2 great tight ends to kind of help him out and see that. But on to number 6, we have David Mills.
No. Nope.
Oh, we have
sorry.
Kyle Trask now.
Kyle Trask, yeah.
I believe he's the quarterback of Florida University, and he has Kyle Pitts in a frenzy, or he has whatever. Anyway, but Kyle Trask. Brandon, you have him 7th, and Dave has him 7th. So who wants to chop it up and go first?
I'll let you go first, Dave.
Yeah. So with Trask, I think you could say this about a couple of the guys. It's just 1-year wonder kind of stuff. But for me, he doesn't offer the consistency enough when it comes to his technique and his accuracy, and he just doesn't offer the upside that the guys that I have above him. So you'll see who I have above Trask because we haven't talked about him yet, but. I just, again, he doesn't wow me. I think he's going to be a day 3 guy. Maybe he sneaks into day 2, but he's just not someone I'm excited about. Maybe he goes to the Bears and you get a QB competition with Andy Dalton and it could get interesting, but until then he's my 7.
Yeah. He's my 7 as well. I mean, for all the reasons you brought up, and his arm strength just isn't where I'd like it to be. He would be interesting on the Bears. That would be a good landing spot for him. I think he'll end up as a late day 2 pick. I think he sneaks into the 3rd round, but he's not somebody. He's the guy drafting Superflex and just let him sit there. Just put him on the taxi and leave him for 2 or 3 years, see what happens.
Get him high, man.
I mean, honestly, after this, I guess to these quarterbacks, I mean, none of them really impressed me to that extent. Honestly, after this, none of these guys I assume to be a full-time starting role. Obviously, Mac Jones probably will be, but I don't really see these guys being full-time starters or franchise type of guys. But Kyle Trask, I compared him with Mac Jones a little bit there. Very somewhat similar to some extent. I think Mac Jones is slightly a bit more accurate, but. Just watching Kyle Trask film, you see his stats improve over the years. He's got a real good zip to the ball there, and I think he can make all the throws. His arm is a slight question, that's for sure, but I think he can make all the throws in this game here. He's got really good pocket awareness, and I think he's just a bigger guy. I feel like he could just do more. He's like a very poor man's Ben Roethlisberger right now, and again, he'd probably be a day 2, day 3 pick, but at this point, the quarterbacks for me are just kind of a crapshoot at this point. No one really impressed me, but Kyle Trask's just ability to kind of make all the throws, that's something that really stuck out to me for the most part when I'm watching film on him.
All right. So the next quarterback on our list is David Mills. I believe he went to Stanford University, who it's technically a very smart school. So, Steve, you seem like you'd be a little hater on him. You have him ninth comparatively to the group 6. So, tell us about why you hate David Mills, because that's definitely a hate.
I don't hate David Mills. Again, he didn't do enough for me in college to really say, oh, like this guy can do it. He struggles under pressure to me. He doesn't pick up the blitz well. He's definitely seen some issues with his accuracy and ball placement. And he's unpolished still, I think, personally. Again, if you look at his stats, I mean, he's got 1,900 yards, 11 touchdowns 1 year. Again, he only played 8 games. Last year, only played 5, 1,500 yards, 7 touchdowns. Not horrible, but I haven't seen it from him to want to put him any higher on this list. Just all the other guys on this list have, to some extent, proved that at times, like, wow, they did something really well. David Mills just hasn't done that to that extent for me. He's definitely interesting, and I didn't do too much research until I think it was Brandon. I think it might have been you who might have mentioned him in our group chat, and I'm like, okay, let me go do some film study on David Mills. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see what he's saying there. But the guys above him, I think, have shown that ability that I think David Mills hasn't fully shown you yet, and he didn't do it in college. I mean, I think Stanford's in with the Pac-12, right? So like, he didn't show it in college to like wow me. So I just can't see him doing the NFL yet. Again, maybe he needs some time to sit behind a quarterback and learn and maybe get into that role at some point in his career. But right now, that's kind of why I have him lower right now. He just hasn't shown it to me yet.
Yeah, he's someone that, like, for me, I listen to Matt Miller, I listen to Daniel Jeremiah. I'm not going to pretend that I've sat down and watched, every single Davis Mills snap. But those guys have been talking about how he's rising and rising and rising. And then I don't know if you guys pay attention to NFL Mock Draft Database. I had them on my show recently. They have the consensus mocks, and I've just been watching guys that are climbing. They have a consensus board, so you can go to each position and kind of see where everybody ranks as far as consensus mocks. And I kept seeing Mills, like, he kept having the green arrow up, and I was like, all right, let me look at this guy. And he's currently, the 6th off the board for most people, him and Kellen Mond. And he's 6'4", 225, and he ran a 4.58 40. So he crushed his pro day. He also had a broad jump was 9.2, and his vertical was 32. I mean, he showed more athleticism than I think people think. And the Stanford offense, that pro style offense is something that interests me. So yeah, that's why I was higher on him.
Yeah, I'm higher on him a good bit too, just because I think he's not going to be a starter in the NFL. I don't think he's that talented, but I think he's going to be a solid backup. Maybe compare him to Josh McCown, Case Keenum. He's not going to wow you with his arm or anything, but he can be a good game manager. And, I think he'd go in well with maybe, a Baltimore team that needs a backup just in case Lamar gets hurt.
I like that a lot. And we're going to go on to the next player, next quarterback, which is Kellen Mond. I've been looking up some of these low-lacking quarterbacks the last couple rounds, but I'm just going to assume that Kellen Mond plays for the Aggies of Texas A&M because we have an avid supporter in the background. So, guys, hit it hard on Kellen Mond. Give it up for our boy Chris. He wants some excellent analysis on him.
Oh, Chris is going to hate us after this, I feel like. But we got to talk, so Brandon, I'll let you go first.
All right. Mond, this year you wanted to see him take that next step. A lot of people thought he was going to, but he just didn't. He didn't look good. There were games where he was up and down and some where you just don't even know who he was throwing to. You see that throw at his pro day, and people will go, oh, my God, he's got an arm. Yeah, he's got an arm, but he can't hit nobody. I'm not a huge fan of his. I'd rather take a guy like Jamie Newman, who we'll talk about later, a little bit more upside, but he's probably not somebody I'm touching in any rookie drafts.
Yeah, I had Matt Hicks and Angelo from Angelo Analysis on the show, and I brought up Kellen Mond, and they kind of laughed at me. And I said, well, come on, Chris Sims says he's the number 4 quarterback in this draft. And So they said, basically a lot of the same things that you said. He didn't show that progression that you wanted him to see. He's got athletic traits that wow you. I mean, you see the arm, you see the size, you see the build, and you're like, we can work with this. And then you see him on the field, and 2 years ago, and you're like, this guy can push the ball down the field. He can threaten the defense with his rushing ability. He's got something, and then it did not get better, and then it almost got worse. And it's just like the inconsistencies of his game. He's a raw talent that I think would be a great, a developmental guy that can go in there. And if you're looking for a future quarterback and you can't get one of these top guys, he's someone you might, a quarterback coach might have a lot of fun because he's got a lot of talent. He's got a big arm.
Mm-hmm.
He sure does, yeah. Like I said, I really was interested to hear about him because everyone was talking about Kellen Mond. He's like, he's a fan. He's like, he's a sleeper guy, and I'm like, okay, like I can bring on this. And I started watching this film, like, what's special about him? I mean, he's very inaccurate, horrible under pressure. He can sling the ball downfield at times, and he definitely has a rushing ability that he doesn't use to his full advantage. I feel like too much. He could have escaped the pocket, but he just chose not to. And I feel like if you have that ability to do that, do it. Like, who cares? Like, you have to extend the play. He just never did that enough for me to watch. I mean, again, he had some decent traits in him, but his reads downfield was very just half there. It wasn't really great. But again, I can see why. I mean, he has those traits to possibly be good, but he just hasn't shown it on the field to consistently enough to me to say, oh, I really want to put him higher, but I had to leave him at 8. There's no way I could put him any higher at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I feel you. But now you have to explain why you have Sam Ehlinger. I believe he's a Texas quarterback.
Yeah, definitely need some explaining on that one.
You have number 7. Meanwhile, Dave and Brandon have him not ranked. So
not ranked in the top 10. Maybe they're 11. Maybe he's 11th. I don't know.
Potatoes. You have.
I'll just say it. So. We didn't do a ranking of 11 pass, but I'll just say he's my 11.
All right, cool. I just put unrated. I put 11, I think, in
the right there.
So, with Sam, the things I liked about him, he had that gunslinger mentality to his game there. I mean, he's not afraid to make the throws. He kind of reminded me somewhat of Ryan Fitzpatrick to some extent. Again, he had a decent rushing floor to some extent, but he'll throw it up there. He'll rely on his wide receivers to make the play there. Again, there were some negatives to his game there. I mean, his arm strength at times could be kind of difficult, but he still will throw the ball up there. He doesn't care. Like, he has, again, that Ryan Fitzpatrick mentality without the true arm strength. To me, it was just like, I just liked a gunslinger kind of type of guy. And again, he showed it at times on the field that guys below him didn't show. And that's kind of why I'm sitting at 7. Like, he can make some of those really great throws that Kellen Mond just didn't do, and David Mills didn't show me enough of to make me want to put them above a guy like this here. And that's kind of why I have him at 7. I think he can make a lot of great throws there. Will he ever be a true, starting quarterback? Probably not, but could he have a Ryan Fitzpatrick type of career? Possibly. And that's kind of why I have him at a little bit higher than most of the guys on this list right now.
Yeah, for me, I mean, and Steve's defense and for the defense of the rest of the guys, I mean, you're not going to get a 7th, 8th, or 9th ranked quarterback in the class and have a lot of great things to say about him. You look like last year, what was Jake Fromm ranked? Like the 5th or 6th, and yeah, it's just hard. He looked really good his freshman year, and for me again, I want to see guys that are getting better and better and better. If you just stay the same, then I'm not excited about your upside. So that's why I didn't have him in my top 10.
Yeah. I'll compare him to a lesser Tim Tebow. Really, decent in college, not going to be good in the NFL.
I don't that quick take.
Like I said, after 4, it was just a crapshoot for me, honestly. I liked his mentality. That was one of my big factors with him.
All right. Well, then for the last three, we're just gonna do like a little show and tell. One good thing, one bad thing, if they're so bad. And our next guy is Jamie Newman, quarterback out of Wake Forest University. So I believe Steve had him the lowest. It will go highest to lowest, actually. So Brandon, you start us off.
I don't know why he's not. I don't have him as ranked. I had him at number 8. The reason he's the one guy that I think he's got the most upside. When you watch him at Wake Forest, he's like the true question mark in this draft at quarterback. He could be one of the best, or he could just, not pan out at all. I think him taking the year off really hurt his draft stock. I mean, a lot of people last year were saying that in the 2020 season, he could vault himself up into the first round. But he transfers to Georgia. JT Daniels comes in, and then you got Stetson Bennett, which I don't even know why he was starting. But so Newman decided to opt out of the season, and it hurt him a ton. But I think he's a flyer. I would take him and have him on your bench and just let him sit and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm 100% the same way. I think his upside is intriguing. I think I want to see him. I want to see him in a better situation. He was kind of moved around a lot, and it was hard to see. It's hard to get development that way. So he's definitely going to have to sit before he goes and plays. But, falling in the draft may be a good thing for him. If he goes and lands in Pittsburgh or goes and lands somewhere where he can sit for a year and then take over, that'd be a good thing for him.
Yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of your guys' points. I mean, he has that like dual threat mentality to his game there that he can definitely run. His throwing is, I think it's lesser than what Lamar Jackson does now currently, and it's kind of why, like, if he was a better thrower, he'd probably be higher on this list. He stares down his wide receivers, I think, way too often when watching a lot of film on him. He just struggles with accuracy, and again, he's like a very poor man's Lamar Jackson right now, and again, if he ends up in a situation where he can sit and kind of learn and work on his mechanics in terms of his throwing motions and everything like that, maybe he can end up being a really good quarterback. But again, he's a guy who can run very well, but just the throwing ability just isn't to my liking right now. I'm not there yet. Still there, Jibs?
I'm here.
Oh,
I want to do the thingamajig and didn't work. Number 9, Shane, I guess.
Bouchel.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
So apparently that's my guy. So for me, I do think he's an intelligent quarterback. He's got a little bit of athleticism. He's very accurate. Does not have the strongest arm, and that's going to hold him back. But I think he's someone that could be like a Chase Daniels, where he's a lifetime backup quarterback, but Chase Daniels has made a whole lot of money being a backup quarterback. We just talked about him getting another deal going to the Chargers. So that's where I think. I think he's got a little bit upside because he is, like I said, an intelligent. He developmental. He's got a good locker room presence, and the coaches spoke highly of him. But yeah, not much else to say.
Yeah, I think he had a lot of hype coming into the 2020 season. Him in that SMU offense. I like him. I think, like you said, he's going to end up being a backup quarterback. I think he stays in the league, but I don't think he'll ever be a starter, but he'll be a decent backup.
Yeah, if he came out last year, I think I had him as high as like 7 or 8 last year in terms of my rankings. I really liked him coming out last year, but just watching the film on him this year, I guess he didn't really like improve anything to me to make me want to just like anything. He just played worse to me, honestly, and it's kind of why I don't have him ranked. Again, I liked him. I liked his talent last year. It's just that he didn't show anything more when he came when I watched the film on him in this past season here. It was very mediocre at best. But again, he could definitely be a long-term backup quarterback in this league.
Yeah, and I just want to throw this out there. Remember this was a weird offseason, so a lot of these guys, we had guys that opted out. We had guys that, like Trey Lance, played one game. We had all this. We had no offseason, like the training programs and stuff. So it was a really weird. So you're going to see some guys that go in the draft that might surprise the hell out of you because, it's just a really weird evaluation process with this whole COVID thing.
Absolutely.
This was a tough year for a lot of evaluations, that's for sure.
And on to our last quarterback. I think this is supposed to be Ian Book out of Notre Dame, not Ian Brooks. So, Brandon, since you have him 10 and the other folks have him not ranked, tell us why you like Ian Book.
His rushing upside, maybe. I mean, I don't think he's that great of a quarterback. He's just a guy I threw in there like at 10. I don't think he's anything special.
Just threw him in there. Honest, I like that. Very honest.
Yeah.
That's one good thing.
Yeah. I can't really say much about him. That's nice.
Toughness. Yeah, he played, the North Carolina game, some other games. He played pretty tough, even though he got, hit in the mouth a few times.
He can run the ball. He can throw it real quick, throw it with velocity. That's for sure. He can extend the play, but watching him actually throw the ball and his accuracy, it was just very hard to watch. I couldn't even watch the whole game.
Yeah.
It was very hard to watch him play football.
Not pretty.
Well, that wraps up our rookie quarterbacks for 2021. Obviously, subject to change with landing destinations and whatnot. And it was a great podcast, guys. I want to give a shout out to Dave at Dynasty Dorks. Thank you for coming in. Brandon, you did a great job as your first timer. So hope to have you on for many more episodes. Steve,
absolutely.
I hate you. I'll be on next week. Don't worry about it.
Did a great job hosting for me. We're going to go back eventually, guys, but we're taking a little bit of a break of the hosting life. So
I'm the captain now.
You're the captain. Let everyone know, where they can find you on Dynasty Nerds and just what you guys do. We didn't need to do that in the beginning. Host.
Oh, for me?
Yeah. Let everyone know about your guys' stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me at Dynasty Dorks Fantasy Football on YouTube, as well as we're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and TikTok. We just hit 1,000 followers on TikTok, making some funny videos on there, as well as trying to drop some knowledge. But yeah, it's Dynasty Dorks. It's at Dynasty Dorks Fantasy Football.
Don't forget to tune into the NFL draft stream you're going to be doing too, man. I'll be on there joining you at some point.
Yeah. So we got a few things going on. We got the NFL. We're going to do an NFL mock draft live. I got 7 other guys that are come on. It's a pretty awesome lineup. And then we're going to do an NFL draft watch party. So I'm going to have an open link. So Steve's going to come on and just, chop it up for a little bit, talk about the picks, talk about the fantasy football implications. We're going to do a few giveaways. Dynasty Trade Calculator is going to give away some subscriptions. Angel Analysis as well. I got some other guys. So it's going to be fun. It'll be on the draft. It'll be during the draft. Day 1 and day 2. Open link. Come hang out.
Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, but you can find me at Brandon Cook FF on Twitter. I know I write for the coaches, and then I also have my first article for Dynasty Nerds coming up here shortly. It's a Kendall Milton Debbie profile, so look for that soon.
Dope.
Let's go, Brandon. Way to go, bro. Love it. And I guess I'll go, Jibs, unless you want to.
Yeah, I'll go. You can sign off.
All right, you go.
Hosting, and you can follow me at Hot Take Honcho on Twitter. Steve, finish us off.
Yeah, man, I already missed my hosting. I didn't do it one episode. I already missed it, but yeah, guys, quick, sponsor real quick for our show. We're working with the Real Fantasy Football League. If you haven't heard it, we talked about it a couple times now in a few episodes here. It's basically thinking of the real world meets fantasy football. These guys are basically doing two fantasy football leagues with cash prizes and championship belts. And basically what they're going to do is you go on our website at www.thefantasycoaches.com. You apply, they do an interview with you, and you'll be flown out to their location, which I believe it's Louisiana now. I don't really know still, but it's on the site there, and you'll be flown out to do the drafts live. They'll have you come on the podcast, and they're basically just podcast your guys' entire season each and every single week here. It's a pretty cool new concept here, and the fact that you get flown out is pretty cool too. So you can check that out on our website on www.thefantasycoaches.com. Just mention the fantasy coaches, and we're going to get at least one of our listeners to get on that show. So it'll be pretty interesting. So, and as always, you can follow us on Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. You can follow us on Instagram at The Fantasy Coaches. You can follow me at Coach Stephen P. And we appreciate you guys for listening in tonight. We'll be back next Thursday to talk rookie running backs. And again, we thank you guys for all jumping on today and listening in as well. So take care, guys, and have a good one.